Good evening and welcome to Sky Night. The waning crescent moon, with 11% illumination, appears as a thin crescent low in the east before sunrise in Gemini. Please enable captions in your preferred language to view local observing cities and times. Join me for a guided tour of the entire sky visible tonight. Venus glows halfway up the southern sky, standing alongside the Turtle Nebula and Altair, high above. As the night progresses, Alpha Capricornids meteors streak halfway up the southern sky, while Deneb sits almost straight overhead and southern Delta Aquariids meteors appear in the same southern region, all before the moon meets Mars near the eastern horizon. As dawn approaches, the Andromeda Galaxy rises almost straight overhead and Mercury appears near the eastern horizon, while Saturn sits halfway up the southern sky and the Triangulum Galaxy shines high in the southern sky. The double cluster glows high in the northern sky and Murphak stands almost straight overhead, with Perseids meteors visible high in the northern sky. The tour concludes with the moon being crossed by satellites. Venus dominates the southern sky halfway up, a dazzling silver-white point that outshines every star. It is near greatest elongation, making it impossible to miss tonight. In London, the planet culminates at 9:15 in the evening, while New York and Los Angeles follow at 8:35 in the evening and 8:15 in the evening respectively. In 1970, the Soviet Venera 7 became the first spacecraft ever to land softly on another planet and send back data, though the searing heat and crushing pressure silenced it within about an hour. The Turtle Nebula is this night's featured deep sky object, a vivid blue-green planetary nebula in Hercules. Look high in the south between the stars Cornephoros and Razzle-Jethy. Use a telescope at high magnification to see its disk structure. Around 8:30 in the evening, the nebula reaches its highest point in Los Angeles and New York, whereas London sees it culminate at 9:15 in the evening. The star at its heart has kept only about 6/10 of the sun's mass. Everything else it once had is now the nebula we are looking at. In catalogs, it is listed as NGC 6210. Altair is the bright white star situated high in the southern sky, flanked by two fainter companions. It forms the low corner of the summer triangle, which serves as the primary landmark for locating this star. This object is visible to the naked eye without any instrument. This star culminates around 11:35 in the evening for observers in Los Angeles, New York, and London. The name Altair inspired the title of the video game series Assassin's Creed. The first protagonist of this series bears the name Altair ibn Lahad, referencing the Arabic meaning of the star's name as the flying eagle. The Alpha Capricornids meteor shower is active tonight, though fading 10 days past its peak. Look halfway up the southern sky in Capricornus for meteors streaking away from the radiant, with an estimated rate of 1 per hour. The radiant reaches its greatest altitude around 12:10 after midnight, as seen in Los Angeles, New York, and London. Deneb shines almost straight overhead as the blue-white tail of the swan. It marks the top of the Northern Cross and one corner of the summer triangle, visible to the naked eye. At around 12:25 after midnight, this star culminates for Los Angeles, New York, and London, remaining above the horizon all night for all of them. Deneb's distance remains a subject of scientific debate. Estimates range from about 1,550 to as much as 7,400 light-years, because the star is too bright for the Gaia satellite, whose detectors become saturated when trying to measure its parallax, making Deneb one of the few bright stars whose distance is still uncertain. The southern Delta Aquariids are active tonight, offering about 4 meteors per hour. Look halfway up the southern sky in Aquarius, letting your eyes wander off the radiant for the longest trails. The radiant culminates around 2:20 in the morning for observers in Los Angeles, New York, and London. The waning moon and Mars form a close pair near the eastern horizon as they rise. This conjunction is visible to the naked eye across the northern hemisphere. In London, the pair rises at 1:35 in the morning, while New York and Los Angeles see it rise at 2:20 in the morning and 2:38 in the morning respectively. Next, we turn to the crossings of Phobos across the disk of Mars. Phobos makes its first crossing of the apparent disk of Mars, lasting 54 minutes. In Los Angeles, this event occurs between 9:38 in the morning and 10:32 in the morning while Mars is above the horizon, and in New York, it takes place between 12:38 in the afternoon and 1:32 in the afternoon as Mars is above the horizon, whereas in London, Mars is below the horizon. Phobos executes its next crossing of the apparent disk of Mars, lasting 54 minutes. In London, this transit happens between 1:18 in the morning and 2:12 in the morning while Mars is above the horizon, while in Los Angeles and New York, Mars is below the horizon. Phobos completes its third crossing of the apparent disk of Mars, lasting 54 minutes. In New York, the crossing occurs between 3:57 in the morning and 4:51 in the morning with Mars above the horizon, and in London, it takes place between 8:57 in the morning and 9:51 in the morning as Mars is above the horizon, whereas in Los Angeles, Mars is below the horizon. The Andromeda Galaxy is visible to the naked eye almost straight overhead in Andromeda. Hop from the Great Square of Pegasus along two stars to find this faint oval smudge. The galaxy reaches its highest point around 4:25 in the morning for Los Angeles, New York, and London, staying above the horizon all night for all of them. For decades, the Milky Way's collision with the Andromeda Galaxy was taught as a certainty within about 4.5 billion years. In 2025, simulations using Hubble and Gaia data revised the odds sharply. Over the next 5 billion years, there is only about a 2% chance of a crash, and any eventual merger would more likely happen 7 to 8 billion years from now. Mercury is rising from the eastern horizon, visible to the naked eye low in Cancer. Look carefully near the horizon as it comes up. 4:48 in the morning is the rise time in Los Angeles, 4:35 in the morning in New York, and 4:04 in the morning in London. Even though Mercury hugs the sun, radar and NASA's MESSENGER probe found water ice hidden in craters near its poles that sunlight never reaches. Saturn shines as a steady golden point halfway up the southern sky in Pisces. It is fainter than Jupiter, but its calm glow makes it easy to spot with the naked eye. This planet culminates around 4:40 in the morning for observers in Los Angeles, New York, and London. The atmosphere of Saturn consists primarily of hydrogen and helium, similar to Jupiter, but with more complex chemistry including ammonia, methane, and water vapor in trace amounts. The Triangulum Galaxy is a broad, ghostly globe best seen with binoculars high in the south. Look between Andromeda and the small triangle of Triangulum, following the line from Merak. The galaxy reaches its highest point around 5:15 in the morning in Los Angeles and New York, while London sees it culminate at 4:55 in the morning. With an estimated 40 billion stars, the Triangulum Galaxy is the third largest member of our local group, outsized only by the Andromeda Galaxy and our own Milky Way. The double cluster is a binocular gem, appearing as a hazy patch high in the northern sky. Find it between Perseus and the W of Cassiopeia, following the line from Cassiopeia to Perseus. The cluster reaches its highest point around 5:30 in the morning in Los Angeles and New York, remaining above the horizon all night for both, while London sees it culminate at 4:55 in the morning, also staying above the horizon all night. Beyond the glittering twin swarms you see, the double cluster is wrapped in a huge halo of faint stars that pushes the whole system's weight up to at least 20,000 suns. That means the combined mass of NGC 869 and NGC 884, plus their extended family, is roughly 5 times the mass of the famous Pleiades cluster. Merfolk is one of the 50 brightest stars, shining almost straight overhead in Perseus. Follow the W of Cassiopeia extended toward Perseus to find its bright point. This star reaches its highest point around 5:30 in the morning in Los Angeles and New York, remaining above the horizon all night for both, while London sees it culminate at 4:55 in the morning, also staying above the horizon all night. Murphak, as a yellow supergiant, is in a relatively short-lived phase of stellar evolution. This makes it an interesting object for research into the transitional stages of life of massive stars between the main sequence and the red supergiant phase. The Perseids meteor shower is active tonight, building to its peak in 3 days. Look high in the northern sky in Perseus for up to 75 meteors per hour. The radiant reaches its greatest altitude around 5:30 in the morning in Los Angeles and New York, remaining above the horizon all night for both, while London sees it culminate at 4:55 in the morning, also staying above the horizon all night. On this night, 27 satellites cross the moon's disk. 15 of those tracks pass close to towns and settlements, and 6 are presented here. Tiangong Space Station makes a crossing whose ground path begins south of Maha Sarakam at 3:28 in the morning and ends over the open Pacific at 5:32 in the morning. For an observer standing on the narrow path, the crossing of the disk takes only about 1 second. The second of the night sees Tiangong Space Station make a crossing whose ground path begins near Denali at 3:30 in the morning and ends near Yuan at 6:05 in the morning. The third of the night sees Tiangong Space Station make a crossing whose ground path begins over the open Indian Ocean at 3:33 in the morning and ends northeast of Hulbani at 5:07 in the morning. The fourth of the night sees Tiangong Space Station make a crossing whose ground path begins over the Sahara at 3:38 in the morning and ends near Arish at 5:42 in the morning. The fifth of the night sees International Space Station make a crossing whose ground path begins over the open Atlantic at 4:23 in the morning and ends near Bull at 5:26 in the morning. The sixth of the night sees International Space Station make a crossing whose ground path begins over the open Atlantic at 5:56 in the morning and ends northeast of Kita at 6 in the morning. The total solar eclipse is coming soon. Our full eclipse guide comes out in a few hours, covering the cloud outlook for the observing sites, the sun's current activity, and safe observing and photography. Subscribe so you do not miss it. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please subscribe to stay updated, and we wish you clear skies for your next viewing session.